Welcome to the Canadian Business Quarterly podcast, where we speak with Canada's most influential industry leaders on the business and economic development issues taking place across the country. You can stay up to date with all of our content, including our publications, newsletters, and podcasts by visiting www.thecbq.ca and clicking on subscribe.
Today's guest is Bill Fox, founder and CEO of FoxNet. FoxNet is a Waterloo-based IT solutions provider. The FoxNet IT experts understand the impact technology can have on your business every day. Working with medium to large size organizations, FoxNet provides IT infrastructure solutions end-to-end, which includes architecture, design, and implementation. Bill, thanks for joining us today.
Well, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
For listeners who may be unfamiliar with FoxNet, could you give us a bit of background on the organization?
Okay, FoxNet is a company we started in 2002 here based out of Waterloo, Ontario. We basically are an IT infrastructure solutions provider. When we began the company, we were mostly doing Hewlett-Packard type solutions on the infrastructure side. We service customers throughout the GTA and Southern Ontario, Southwestern Ontario. And we've expanded and changed the company, obviously, numerous times over the last 15 years. And I don't know what else to say about it from there on, but...
Who would be your typical client?
So we have a very wide range of clients. We almost cross pretty much every industry. We have customers in education, manufacturing, high-tech, financial services, government. Some of our larger customers are manufacturing steel, such as Dofasco, based out of Hamilton. Home Hardware head office is closely located by Waterloo here at St. Jacobs. There's a large software company called OpenText in Waterloo as well, and the University of Western Ontario has been a large customer of ours for years. But since we started our managed service practice in providing cloud services, we have quite a few medium-sized companies as well that we support and give IT advice and consulting services to.
Okay. It's a bit of a diverse portfolio of clientele. What are some of the common issues that you encounter when, maybe meeting them for the first time?
Right now, a large portion of our business revolves around backup and recovery and strategic storage type of strategies, because there's so much more data being accumulated every day now. Storage and data is becoming probably the largest area. So every company has concerns about how they're backing it up, and everybody wants to store their data safely, and they also want to do it the most efficiently as they can.
And, with the amounts of data that you talk about, are there other issues that you're having to address, like security, backups, or people accessing it from multiple sites and these sorts of issues?
Yeah, absolutely. Security is a top concern for lots of customers. We've had customers that have had attacks, and the ability to back up and restore is very, very important, and lots of customers have sometimes had trouble restoring. The backups have always been done probably religiously, but restoring sometimes is one of the more difficult things, and that's not always the thing that people test or try to evaluate when they're implementing these kind of solutions.
And you had said FoxNet's been around for 15 years in business now. Was that your background beforehand, or how did you get into in the creation of the organization?
Well, I started in this industry working for Hewlett-Packard for a number of years, and then I moved on to Oracle for a number of years, and went into a partnership with a company based out of Mississauga that was doing integration services in the mid-90s. We built that company up and sold it to TELUS around 2001. And then in 2002, we began FoxNet doing primarily the same kinds of things that we did as a solutions integrator in the late 90s, and basically took a few people that were not excited about working for a big company like TELUS and started our company here in Waterloo.
And, I'll ask you about some of the lessons that you've learned in that time, but when you were starting the business, how did you guys present yourself, and were other businesses interested in not dealing with large providers, or how did you differentiate yourself from the large companies you came from?
Just like every kind of business, relationships are really the key. Some of these relationships that I had with some of the big companies, such as Dofasco and University of Western Ontario, I've been doing business with them going back to the early 90s. That really helped get us off to a good start, because a lot of the decision makers felt comfortable with, the relationship that we had, and were willing to move their business to FoxNet. And in the first year, we did a little over $3 million in sales from a dead start, and that was largely due to the fact that we, have had these long-standing relationships with key IT decision makers.
And so now that you've gone through that journey of about a decade and a half, what are some of the changes that you've seen that have surprised you most in the industry?
It's funny you ask that question, because the industry has not changed dramatically for probably the first decade. I mean, there was new technologies that came on board. There were things such as virtualization and new companies that rose to power. When I first began, it was primarily dominated by HP, IBM, and Digital on the infrastructure side. That's changed dramatically. Now, in the last year to 2 years, at least in Canada, people are now finally starting to switch to more cloud computing type strategies. Medium-sized companies are looking for companies to be their IT company. And with the advent of IoT, now we're going to see a dramatic increase and change in our industry over the next 5 years, which is very exciting.
So I'll lead into that. You had mentioned IoT. With the Internet of Things really automating processes that up until a few years ago were still manual, what effects are you seeing from a business perspective, and how this is affecting companies?
Well, there's a couple of areas where I see it's really starting to get some traction. Manufacturing is one of them. There are all kinds of solutions out there in terms of having sensors gather information that can now be used to do predictive maintenance. That's one area that we see as a tremendous opportunity. We just recently did our first smart city parking initiative with the city of Stratford, Ontario. This allows them to track traffic and also be able to provide better parking services for tourists and the people that live in the city of Stratford.
And can you take us through a little bit more, I guess, for people that don't work within the ICT sector? What does this technological change mean? Like, how big of a leap forward is this sort of automation?
Well, it's huge, because they're predicting that there'll be billions of devices, and there already are, the devices that you can think of even in your home, such as your thermostat, and now there's smart appliances and security and all kinds of things. But from a manufacturing standpoint, take for example a city. There's a big push to become smart cities, and everybody wants to get there. Smart cities are everything from parking to garbage, traffic lights. There's a lot of application for cities to get more efficient and provide better services to the people that live there. From a standpoint of the manufacturing, if manufacturing companies can now get a really good handle on when a certain piece of technology or a certain piece of machinery would break down to almost like to the precise minute, they can save themselves millions of dollars by preventing any kind of downtime and using that as a preventative maintenance measure.
And with technology changing so rapidly, ICT is becoming more and more of a cost just to run a regular everyday business. Even small businesses have a website and a CRM and these sorts of things. How do you try to keep your customers up to date with this ongoing list of requirements without them, I guess, going over budget or constantly needing to overhaul their ICT infrastructure?
Well, we've got people, including myself, that are always making sure that we're keeping up to date in terms of products and solutions that are coming out there. As an independent, we also have lots of organizations that will approach us and say, hey, we've got this kind of a solution. Does that fit into something you could provide to your customers? So between our suppliers and the people that are working here, and attending conferences and making sure that we're keeping up to date, it allows us to make sure that our portfolio is always current. We've also brought in a former HP guy who was one of their top strategists for years, who has now left HP basically as a retired HP person who can build all kinds of IT strategies for companies and has done IT transformations all over the world. And so we've got some high-end strategy people that can provide good guidance.
You've sort of already answered my next question, because I was going to ask you, why do you think people choose FoxNet for their ICT provision? You've talked about ongoing education and some of the senior staff and knowledge, but are there any other factors that you think differentiates you guys from competitors in the market?
Well, I think one of the things is we're a small enough company that we're very agile, and people. In a lot of cases, people do like the local presence here in Southern Ontario, and they like the fact that it's a small company that they can call me or they can call the people they've had, working relationships for years. And it's not a big company that moves slowly. If we have to act quickly and resolve something or make decisions, it's easier for them because of our agility.
And so as we begin to wind up the chat that we're having, what are some of the business lessons that you've learned from starting up the business and dealing with a range of clientele?
Some of the things that every small business goes through is when we started the company, I certainly did not have enough money to start it. Had I known then what I know now, I was very underfunded. So, every company goes through their ebbs and flows in terms of cash flow, especially small companies. I don't have any business partners or any investment partners in the company. So from that perspective, cash planning is key. It's always tough, and the other thing is sales is always the key thing to keep going. And you really, even though we've had many successful years, we can never just kind of lay back and think, okay, because we've done well for this number of years, that next year is going to be great too. It just doesn't translate that. You can never take your eye off the ball.
All right. Okay. And look, last question for you, Bill, before we finish for today. Is there anything else that you'd like to add or mention to listeners today?
Just that we're I think it's going to be a very exciting time when it comes to. And I keep going back to the IoT world. We're building out a practice aggressively. We're getting all kinds of people that are asking us, how do I do an IoT project? Where do we get started? My company wants us to do something. How do we go about it? So our company is, unique because we can help with strategic workshops to get people started on that road. And once the business sees the value of an IoT project, then it makes it a lot easier for them to get funding and also to see the rewards of doing that kind of a strategy.
Excellent. Well, Bill, thanks very much for your time today, and look forward to speaking with you again in future.
Okay, great. Thanks, Jess.
This has been a production of the Canadian Business Quarterly, a division of Romulus Rising Proprietary Limited. All rights reserved. You can stay up to date with the Canadian Business Quarterly, including our publications, newsletters, and podcasts by visiting www.thecbq.ca and clicking on subscribe.